Chapter 1. The Wedding That Wasn't. Kieran Stormy wasn't usually the dramatic type. He preferred footnotes over fanfare, library shelves over luxury limousines. But even the calmest alpha could only take so much, especially when their family sold them off like some glorified paperweight. "You're marrying Aurelian Knox," his mother had announced, like she was gifting him a designer handbag instead of a billionaire enigma, with a cultish fanbase and a face too pretty for his own good. Kieran had smiled, tightly. Then, 3 days later at the grand engagement dinner held in the golden ballroom of the Stormy estate, Kieran lost it. And by lost it, we mean, launched a full glass of 1945 Chateau Mouton Rothschild wine into the chest of a particularly smug Knox cousin, announced, "I'd rather marry a raccoon in a trash can," and stormed out, flipping off a chandelier on his way. 2 forged IDs, a bribe to a shady travel agent, and 1 very sketchy plane ride later. Kieran Stormy became Kian Sato, international transfer student and literature major at Ashfield University, a quiet campus nestled in a rainy city far, far away from anything remotely glamorous. He spent his mornings reading Sylvia Plath, his afternoons drinking black coffee, and his nights cursing his heat cycles for making him weak to pretty enigma faces. He was safe, invisible, free. Until he wasn't. It was a Monday. The rain tapped on the windows like a metronome. Professor Eldridge was mid-rant about romanticism when the lecture hall doors slammed open. And in walked him, Aurelian Knox. Wearing sunglasses indoors, holding a caramel latte, and dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than Kieran's entire education. "Sorry I'm late," Aurelian said to the stunned professor. Then his eyes met Kieran's, slow, deliberate, with the kind of grin that spelled trouble in 10 different languages. "Surprise, fiancé." The entire class turned to stare at Kieran. Kieran stared back at Aurelian, and then whispered, "I'm going to kill him." Aurelian winked. "Kinky. Save it for our honeymoon." Chapter 2. The Stalker with Credit Card. Kieran had exactly 3 rules when he reinvented himself abroad. 1. Stay low profile. 2. Avoid attention. 3. Never, under any circumstance, interact with Aurelian Knox again. Naturally, within 24 hours of Aurelian crashing his literature class like a smug wrecking ball in Gucci boots, all 3 rules were obliterated. The next morning, Kieran woke up to the unholy sound of a violin solo outside his dorm window. At 6 a.m., dressed in his sleep shirt, hair resembling a broomstick, he yanked open the curtain expecting a lost music student, and instead found a full quartet, complete with red roses, a "Welcome Home, Baby" banner, and Aurelian lounging on a velvet folding chair like he was posing for a royal portrait. "I hate you," Kieran mouthed through the glass. "I brought croissants," Aurelian mouthed back, holding up a paper bag like it was a peace offering instead of a bribe. By the end of the week, Kieran had more reasons to lose his mind. Day 2. Aurelian miraculously gets transferred into every single one of Kieran's classes. When asked how, he just shrugged. "I'm rich and pretty. The rules don't apply to me." Day 3. Kieran finds a handwritten love letter in his Shakespeare textbook. It reads, "Deny thy name, refuse thy books, but never deny thy fiancé. P.S. You looked hot today." Day 4. There's a flash mob in the cafeteria, dancing to a romantic remix of "Can't Take My Eyes Off You," which ends with Aurelian holding a bouquet and being dramatically lifted into the air like Simba. Kieran nearly choked on his lunch. By day 6, Kieran was 1 eye twitch away from combusting. He cornered Aurelian by the vending machine, eyes narrowed. "You need to stop." Aurelian blinked innocently, halfway through unwrapping a chocolate bar. "Stop what?" he asked, voice dripping with faux confusion. "The stalking, the serenades, the Shakespearean love notes." "Oh," Aurelian said, then grinned. "But babe, if I don't woo you, how will we ever fall in love before the baby comes?" Kieran froze. "What baby?" Aurelian bit into the chocolate, shrugged. "Manifesting. Manifestation is powerful, Kiki." Kieran made a strangled noise and walked away before he did something illegal. Aurelian called after him. I'll pick you up for class tomorrow. Wear that black sweater. It brings out your inner rage. Chapter 3. The seduction games begin. I'm not here to force the marriage, Aurelian said casually, spinning a pen between his fingers during seminar like they weren't discussing 19th century Gothic horror. I'm just here to make you fall in love with me, babe. Kieran didn't even look up from his notes. Delusional. Aurelian leaned in closer, grinning. Delusional for you. Kieran slowly turned his head face blank. Do you ever stop? Aurelian tilted his head. Only if you tell me to stop. With a kiss. Kieran stabbed his pen into Aurelian's notebook. Hard. Despite the stabbing, Aurelian did not, in fact, stop. He walked Kieran to every class, carried his books, bought him exactly one black coffee with 2 sugars every morning and whispered, "For my sweet and bitter alpha," like it was a line from a trashy romance novel. Kieran returned the favor by slamming doors in his face and pretending Aurelian was allergic to affection. But Aurelian just thrived on rejection. One stormy Thursday night, the university held a mandatory literature mixer, a fancy term for make awkward small talk while pretending to care about poetry. Kieran showed up in a sleek black turtleneck, hoping to quietly sneak in, grab a snack, and leave unnoticed. But then Aurelian arrived. In an all-white suit, with a single red rose, and a dramatic entrance through the ballroom doors like a man ready to propose on live TV. The jazz band paused mid-song. People stared. Kieran visibly short-circuited. You've got to be kidding me, he hissed as Aurelian sauntered over. You wore the turtleneck, Aurelian said softly, eyes shining like he hadn't just hijacked the entire event with his ridiculous aura. You know it makes me weak. Kieran crossed his arms. You are weak. Aurelian leaned in, eyes suddenly serious. Only for you. By the time the rain started pouring outside, Kieran was emotionally frayed, wine loose, and annoyed beyond reason. You don't know me, he snapped, cornered by Aurelian on the empty balcony, wind whipping through his hair. You just want a trophy bond to parade around your rich friends. I knew who you were before I ever wanted you, Aurelian said, stepping closer. And I didn't chase you across the globe just for a pretty face. Kieran rolled his eyes. You're still drunk on your own ego. Maybe. But tonight, I'd rather be drunk on you. Kieran blinked. That's the cheesiest thing you've ever said. Aurelian smiled, suddenly softer, rawer. Then why aren't you walking away? Kieran didn't answer. He didn't walk away. Instead, they kissed. It was messy, angry, full of tension, want, and unspoken words. It tasted like rain, regret, and too many late-night glances across lecture halls. And then, somewhere between kissing and panting and trying to pretend it wasn't happening, Kieran's heat kicked in sharp and sudden. His control slipped. Aurelian's didn't. The bond bite was instinctive, rough and deep against Kieran's neck. A glow, soft and pulsing, curled between them like a silent promise neither was ready to speak aloud. When it was over, Kieran gasped for air, pushed Aurelian back, and whispered, You bastard. Aurelian, breathless and glowing, replied, Yeah, but I'm your bastard now. Chapter 4. Baby Bombshells and Identity Reveal. It had been 1 month since that kiss, that bite, that thing that Kieran was absolutely refusing to acknowledge ever happened. If Aurelian dared bring it up, Kieran would just raise a perfectly arched brow and go, I don't know what you're talking about. Must have been a fever dream. Seek help. So naturally, Aurelian tried to bring it up every single day. He was met with doors slammed in his face, dramatically flung books, and a record-breaking number of sarcastic no's in a row. Still, Aurelian was undeterred. Silence is just another form of flirting, he insisted one morning after Kieran elbowed him out of his seat. You're practically serenading me with your rage. Kieran responded by stabbing a fork into his salad with enough force to shatter world peace. And then it happened. In the middle of Lit Theory 204, while Professor Eldridge was monologuing about postmodern realism, Kieran blinked. Once, twice, then promptly collapsed face first onto his desk. Cue screaming. Cue chaos. Cue Aurelian bursting into the infirmary in under 5 minutes, demanding to know if his fiancée was dying, and if not, could he please hold his hand dramatically. The doctor looked vaguely terrified. And then he said the magic words. He's not dying. He's pregnant. Silence. Utter silence. Followed by, I'm going to be a dad, Aurelian cried, tears forming, grabbing the doctor's clipboard like it was a holy relic. Did you hear that, Kiki? You're making our tiny chaos demon. Kieran groaned from the bed, half-conscious, mumbling, No, nope, take it back, I'm deleting this reality. News spread through campus like wildfire. The mysterious alpha literature major is pregnant? Rumor has it his fiancée is that hot new billionaire transfer student who started a flash mob last week. I heard they bonded during a thunderstorm and made out on the roof of the science building. Kieran considered hibernating for the next 9 months. But Aurelian had other plans, like carrying him bridal style to class. Put me down, you psycho, Kieran hissed as students openly gawked. You fainted once. What if it happens again? I'm your baby daddy and your emotional support idiot. I will bite you back and it won't be romantic. That's my feisty little alpha, Aurelian cooed. You're glowing, by the way. I'm glowing with rage. Later that night, Kieran finally snapped. They were alone in Aurelian's obscenely gold-accented penthouse, because of course he bought the place across Kieran's dorm. Kieran stood stiffly, hands clenched. You knew, he said, voice low. Aurelian blinked. Knew what? You knew who I was the whole time. You knew I faked my identity. You knew I ran away from the wedding. And you... He jabbed a finger in Aurelian's chest. You followed me here like some romance novel stalker with a black card. Aurelian's smile faltered. Then he looked down, gently catching Kieran's hand. I did, he said. I knew everything. The moment you left, I traced you halfway across the world. I changed my name, my records, bribed admissions, all for you. You shouldn't have come here for me, Kieran muttered, eyes burning. Why not? Aurelian whispered. The way I acted out for love. Kieran stared at him, lips parted, heart cracking. Because it was so stupid, and so ridiculous, and so incredibly him. And Kieran didn't know whether to punch him or kiss him. Possibly both. Chapter 5. No escape from the knot and love. Kieran Stormy had survived literature exams, family power games, and Aurelian's entire existence. But he was not prepared to survive pregnancy cravings, morning sickness, and the crushing realization that he was now emotionally tethered to the most dramatic man alive. He paced the penthouse floor like a caffeinated lion, whispering, Nope, not happening. Denial is an acceptable life choice. I'm too pretty to be this responsible. And then he did what any emotionally overwhelmed alpha would do. He ran. Again. He didn't even get past the elevator. Because Aurelian was already waiting in the lobby in an all-black suit, leaning on a gold-tipped cane he definitely didn't need, sipping espresso like a mob boss in a K-drama. Going somewhere, sweetheart? He asked, voice like silk over a dagger. Kieran froze. Just air. In your pajamas? Kieran looked down. Damn. Betrayed by Pikachu print pants. Aurelian stepped closer, eyes soft, voice terrifying. You're mine, Kieran, and our pup needs both parents. I let you run once. I won't let you leave me a second time. The next few days were hell. An emotional war broke out in the penthouse, shouting matches over stupid things like baby vitamins and nursery colors, crying fits at 3 a.m., and a lot of hormone-fueled sarcasm. You bought a $10,000 crib? Kieran snapped. It has Bluetooth and temperature control. It's a crib, not a spaceship. You deserve a spaceship. Kieran threw a pillow at his face. Aurelian caught it, hugged it, whispered, It smells like you. Kieran threw another. But not all the moments were rage and dramatics. Sometimes Kieran would wake up from a nightmare and find Aurelian already holding him, whispering soft lullabies in languages he didn't recognize. Sometimes, Aurelian would fall asleep kneeling beside Kieran's side of the bed, hand curled protectively over the barely there bump like it was the most sacred thing in the world. Sometimes Kieran would catch himself smiling at Aurelian's dumb jokes and hate himself for it. And one rainy night, when Kieran sat crying silently on the bathroom floor, overwhelmed and lost, Aurelian knelt beside him, pulled him into his arms, and whispered, "I know you're scared. But I swear on everything I have, Kieran, you're not alone in this. You'll never be alone again." Kieran didn't respond. But he didn't push him away either. Chapter 6. The Wedding Again. Kieran Stormy had finally accepted the fact that he was stuck with Aurelian Knox, Alpha, Enigma, Menace, and now fiancé again. But this time on his terms. "I'm agreeing to this wedding," Kieran said, arms folded, baby bump just beginning to peek under his sweater. "Because I want to. Not because of your stupid violent flash mobs or obsessive stalker energy." Aurelian clutched his heart. "So you do love my stalker energy. I tolerate you, barely." "Close enough," Aurelian beamed. "Get ready to be my husband, my love, my obsession, my—" "Stop talking before I unaccept your proposal." The wedding was pure chaos, naturally. It was held in a rose-covered private estate, guarded tighter than a mafia vault, with enough glittering gold to blind every guest. Kieran walked down the aisle in a sleek ivory tux tailored around his growing bump. He looked deadly and divine. "Aurelian?" he gasped, clutched his chest, and fainted. Actually fainted. Onto the marble floor, mid-vow rehearsal. "My soulmate is too beautiful. This is an act of violence," he whispered dramatically, fanning himself as Kieran stared blankly. "Get up." "But the light of your smile scorched my soul. Get up, or I'm walking back." Just when things started to calm down, an old rival family member stood and said something about shame and betrayal, and how an alpha like Kieran was ruined now. Big mistake. Because before anyone could blink, bam! Kieran decked him square in the jaw at the altar. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Aurelian moaned softly. "You punching people for me is the hottest thing I've ever seen." "Wasn't for you." Kieran wiped his knuckles with a tissue. "He insulted me." Aurelian grinned like it was Christmas. During the vows, Aurelian held Kieran's hands like they were the only two people on Earth. "I chased you across countries, broke every rule for you. I loved you before I even knew you. And now the world will know you're mine." Kieran rolled his eyes, again. But there was the softest smile tugging at his lips. "You're so dramatic," Kieran muttered. "And you're so in love with me." "Maybe." And so began their ridiculous new life. Kieran studied by day, now with a fancy scholarship arranged totally not by Aurelian, him, and came home to find his husband trying to cook for him and burning water. Aurelian ran a business empire by day and turned into the clingiest emotional support pillow by night. They decorated their nursery with equal parts murder threats and baby laughter. Kieran glared. Aurelian swooned. The baby kicked. And in that perfect, dramatic mess, they lived chaotically, happily ever after. Epilogue: the pup, the drama, and the daily chaos 3 years later. "Papa, Dada's in the kitchen again. He's making the fire alarm sing." Kieran sighed from the living room, flipping a page of his thesis draft. "Aurelian, step away from the stove before I set you on fire." From the kitchen. "It's called pancakes, love. I saw it on a YouTube tutorial. The flames mean it's working." Their toddler, little Cassian Stormy Knox, zoomed into the living room with sparkly wings strapped to his back, a plushie in each hand, and an attitude bigger than both his parents combined. Kieran scooped him up, pressing a kiss to his chubby cheek. "You're lucky you're cute." Cassian grinned. "I got that from Dada." Unfortunately, life was still chaotic. Aurelian was still extra. Kieran was still perpetually exasperated but in love. Their house had toddler toys next to antique vases. A baby monitor sat beside Aurelian's gold watch, and their nights were filled with bedtime stories, secret snuggles, and the occasional fight about who taught Cassian to sass back. You taught him sarcasm. I gave him personality. At a family gala, when someone whispered that Kieran had settled down so much, he just rolled his eyes and replied, "Settled? I'm surviving a 3-year-old, a drama-obsessed husband, and a life full of burnt pancakes. This isn't settling. This is warfare." Aurelian swooped in moments later, dramatic as ever, holding Cassian like a trophy. "And we're winning, baby." And as Kieran sat one night watching his mate fall asleep with their child drooling on his chest, he let himself smile quietly. Because maybe, just maybe, this chaotic, fire-prone, overly affectionate life was exactly what he needed. And he wouldn't trade it for anything.